Today we'll be playing another completed ROM hack in Dark Worship. It takes place in the seafood region, you've heard that right. So if you're a big fan of that cuisine, you're going to love this game too. It's based on an entire new story with an evil team that's trying to take over the world with Zygarde. It has all the features from Mega Evolution up to Dynamax, Pokemon up until Generation 8, as well as Hisuian forms, and there's even some YouTubers that are NPCs.
Oh, that's hot.
And there is just so much more. Before we jump into it, let me know what your favorite Generation 6 Pokemon is. Mine is the big bad dinosaur Tyrantrum, and if we can smash 7 likes, that will be amazing. Now let's stomp down some Cultists in Pokemon Dark Worship. We get greeted by Professor Yami, who explains our objective to us, which is to become Pokemon League champion and make sure the region runs smooth. My own character sprite looks super cool, one of the coolest ones I've actually seen out there, and our rival's name is going to be Patrick with the blue hair. But there might be something wrong with his face. The professor then tells me to get out there and kick some ass, so that's what we'll do, but first we have to pick our difficulty options. I decided to go with normal mode because I don't really want to crawl my own eyes out, but if that's something you're interested in, you can always try that. I also decided to implement the level cap so that I don't have to worry about that myself. Upon going downstairs to meet up with our mom, who's actually got a name now, and I think you pronounce it as May. She sends me off to Professor Yami's lab, where we also meet up with Patrick. We get to choose between every single starter of the 3 generations, except for Eevee and Pikachu, and since this game is linked with Zygarde, I wanted to go with the Generation 6 starter, and yes, it's the most obvious one, Froakie. Our rival here won't pick a Pokemon that's weak against us. He's actually going to try and beat me with a grass type starter, but we don't find out which one yet. I head back to my house to pick up my running shoes and admire some of the art style that this game has. It really reminds me of Pokemon Unbound a lot, and since that is my second favorite ROM hack ever, that's definitely a good thing. This random guy gives me the Lucky Egg, which is going to make grinding a lot easier, and then we follow Route 1 to Marlin Town. As I try to enter the Pokemon Center, I have to battle Patrick, and we see that he has chosen Trico. 2 fast boys against each other. But mine is a little bit higher leveled, so I come out on top. After the battle, he mentions that he's going to head over to Mystery Lake, and before we go and follow him, we first get a tour of the Pokemon Center. We see that every Pokemon Center will have a move relearner, but also a move tutor that will have more moves available if you get more gym badges. Upon entering some guy's house, we see that he's very obsessed with Pikachus, and should probably get some help. A woman lost her child, so we'll be looking for him as well, but first we pick up some honey from a random stranger, and give that to a Munchlax because he was blocking the road. Do any of you guys remember the Deoxys vs Rayquaza movie where Munchlax was introduced? That movie made me love Munchlax so much more. He's still not allowed in my kitchen though. I do add him to the team and head over to Mystery Lake where Patrick's already waiting for me. And we start spying on this evil team that just arrived at the shore. They're talking about recreating the world because it's going through a very rough time with a legendary Pokemon. So now they will scour the entire region for this Pokemon and won't let anybody stop them. That's where we come in, the #1 rescue team. He won't just let a simple child get in his way, so sect leader Isaac throws out his Mimikyu. But that's nothing that a metronome Munchlax can't handle. With a hit smash, we end the battle, then goes on to a rant what his cult is all about and how they all managed to bring people with the same ideas together so that they can all live as equals in this cult. And if anybody doesn't join them, they will be wiped out when creating his new world. They leave in their yellow submarine. Patrick then comes up to me and mentions that we should try and investigate more in this cult to eventually stop them. Upon leaving, he also hands me the EXP share and then we part ways. Once that's done, we find the kid by the lakeside and bring him back to his mother. As a reward, I get the Rock Tomb TM and the ability to head into Wire Forest, where I grab a Weedle and evolve it into Beedrill. Because believe it or not, I actually quite like Beedrill. In about the middle of the forest, we run into Barry from Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. He says that he's also visiting this region with his friend Gold and asks if we've seen him around. Obviously we haven't yet, but he has seen that we were Pokemon trainers, so he decides to challenge me. His team is kind of a pushover, with Starly and Chimchar going down to Water Pulses from Froakie, and his last Pokemon Impidimp falling to Tackle from Munchlax. With that extra XP, my Froakie evolves into Frogadier, and shortly after we run into Dr. Tucker, a guy that's being harassed by Mankeys. Kinda reminds me of those Mankeys that break your house in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. So I gave them a good beating, and as a reward I get the Dynamax band. By far the worst gimmick, I know, but it might be necessary to take down some gym leaders. We then get to Coral City, and I really love the statues that they place in every single city and town. I'm just a big fan of good design choices in general. We also go to the hairdressers, not for me, but for Furfroos. Hands up if this was actually a feature you forgot about too. Regardless of that, I ran into this weird tablet on the floor with all of these signs on it, and I have no idea what they even mean, so maybe later on in the story we'll be able to find out what this thing does. Then I make my way up to the mountain into Luris Cave, where I grab my next team member Bronzor, check out the melee knockoff gym, which is now led by Sunnen and his Howlucha. And if you only look at its sprite for 2 seconds, it's pretty clear that this guy could be my long lost dad. Anyway, if it wasn't clear already, he does have fighting types, and my Frogadier goes up against his Scraggy. We both use our Dynamax on the first turn, and even though he's able to use a couple of potions, I still come out on top. His Howlucha, on the other hand, is able to one-shot me the turn after, so I bring in Bronzor. As he spams Substitute, I keep on breaking them with Confusion until he eventually runs out and is forced to go down and bring in Electabuzz. Bronzor does go down by a Fire Punch, but Munchlax can easily deal with it by using Chip Away 3 times in a row. First gym badge acquired. Onto the deepest part of Luris Cave, where we see Patrick once more. This time he mentions that he's seen the cult going in here, but suddenly disappearing behind this wall. So we talk to a couple of stones in the right order and open it up. Upon entering, we see Yveltal standing there. No idea what it's doing in this teeny tiny cave, but Isaac says that this is the first key to achieve his glory. He captures it in a mystic Pokeball, and then we jump in, threatening to call the police if he doesn't stop his antics. Since he's the greatest priest that has ever existed, he's not going to let us off so easily and challenges me to another battle. This time he's adding an Alola Marowak to his team, implying that his team will probably be full of ghost types by the end. Frogadier and Munchlax washed him away, and with the mighty Yveltal by his side, he can now flee the scene with us being able to do absolutely nothing about it. We are, however, able to pick up a Jaw Fossil. We say goodbye to Patrick, talk to an old guy who gives me the crazy axe which you can use to cut down trees, and the only crazy thing about it is the name. On the next round, I capture an Electrike and save an old guy from the cult. This was just a side quest though, because they were harassing him for his EV training items. And as a reward, we get the Power Bracer. We make our way through another cave, and at the end of it, we see that Gold is also on his way to the next gym badge. So we follow in his footsteps and arrive in Solaris City, where we pick up the item finder from a guy that's just staring at a fence. In the Pokemon Center, we meet one of the professor's aides, Dr. Gero, and he gives me the Pokedex. Why did he not give me this at the start? I don't know, but it seems pretty useless sending a child out there without having a Pokedex with him. I'm not going to question his methods. Instead, I started to explore the city and ran into a guy that wanted to trade an Electrike for a Toxel, so that's what I did because I kinda like Toxtricity. I also pick up a Natu and then head over to the gym, but before we can enter, Gold also comes my way and is like, hey, you're a trainer too, right? Let's battle. While his first Pokemon, Apom, takes care of me with a Seed Bomb of all moves, I do decide to revenge Frogadier with Beedrill. I also do about half of Togetic's health with a Venoshock before going down to Air Slash. Munchlax chips it away, and the last Pokemon, Arakudo, goes down to Bronzor's Confusion. After realizing he probably isn't strong enough to take on this gym, he gives me the power-up Hit TM and goes on his merry way. Before entering the gym, I first evolved Natu into Zatu, captured a Tauros and a Bouffalont. It's looking like I'm starting a farm here, but honestly, I don't think I've ever used a Bouffalont, so this is the perfect time. The gym itself is actually a pretty easy one. You just have to go into a room, then go through one of the other door openings, and if you pick the right one, you get into the next room, but if you pick the wrong one, you get sent back to the beginning. Eventually, we do reach the gym leader Katrina, and she specializes in dark types, and boy do I remember the times from Generation 7 where there wasn't even a dark type gym leader yet. But now it's time to show her why there were none. First up is Vullaby, which Frogadier easily freezes to death with Icy Winds. The next Pokemon, Umbreon, is known for being a very bulky wall that can always stall you out with Toxic. Luckily here I had Bouffalont on the team, and after using Dynamax and Max Knuckle 2 times, it did go down just like the next Pokemon, Morpeko. Her ghost type Oricorio does put an end to my reign, so I bring in Munchlax, get lucky here and there with some paralyzes by Thunder Punch, and eventually take down the Dancing Bird. With my second gym badge in hand, we have to go over a bridge that's being guarded by a troll. Or is it just an old man? Anyway, his quiz is pretty easy, but I've heard that if you get one of the questions wrong, he'll attack you with a level 100 Dracozolt. I then arrive in Shelltown, but there is an emergency crisis going on here. Grandpa Iranau's Eevee has been stolen, which means that we can't leave this town. It's all on lockdown before the perpetrator has been found. So I go back to a local farm and try to enter their milking room. Sounds pretty sus to me. And after talking to all of the Miltank there, one of them seems pretty suspicious. So we take off their mask and see that it's actually a cult member who just loves to dress up as a Miltank, I guess. But he's also the one that stole the Eevee. So after totally obliterating his team with minimal casualties, we get to save the Eevee, and Grandpa comes along being super grateful. He also tells me to come to his house to get a reward. And boy, is this reward worth it. The shiny charm. So hopefully we'll be able to find one, but I guess you'll just have to watch the rest of the video to find out. I then decide to pick up a Durand because surprisingly it's a really good Pokemon with only one weakness, and I also find my very first Zygarde cell, which means we might ultimately be able to get Big Boy Zygarde. I beat up some of my brethren in an old mine, but once you enter a cave of some kind, you know who you'll be meeting there next. The Dark Worship Cult. We have to do a double battle with two grunts who've been sent to eliminate me. Well, they do have some pretty cool Pokemon like Duskull, Spiritomb, and Doublade. Most of my team members could deal with them with some dark type moves. Don't get me wrong though, this is kind of an insane team to see this early in the game. Once they're defeated, they go back and report to their master, and we easily make our way through the mine and run into a guy with a Charizard costume named Stark, who after doing some research turns out to be a Portuguese Pokemon YouTuber. Pretty cool reference, but he needs our help before he lets us pass. He's arranged a meetup with two of his friends because they were going to do some activities together, but both of them seem to have forgotten that they even had to meet up, so he wants me to go and get them for him. Both of them are just located in the previous two towns, so we go and get them, and they also turn out to be Portuguese Poketubers, because if you didn't know, this game was translated from Portuguese to Spanish. After bringing them back, they're obviously very happy, but they still can't let me pass before they have a Pokemon battle with me. Luckily by now I have evolved my Munchlax into a Snorlax, who can deal with Psychos and fierce Pokemon Gyarados and Gardevoir, and Frogadier can take down Stark's Charizard. We say our goodbyes, get a couple of evolution stones, and arrive in Starboard City, a beautiful seaside town where I'd personally love to go on vacation. But by the time I get to the beach, I see a couple of townspeople that there's trouble rumbling around. Here we see some dialogue with Morgan, this town's gym leader. As it turns out, the cult has invaded the town looking for something that these people are hiding from them. It's some kind of very important egg that can save the world from this cult if they even manage to get to Zygarde. So once they're done talking, I head over to them and say that I want to battle them because this is obviously the next gym leader and I need that gym badge. The gym leader explains the situation to me once again and also says that he can't challenge me right now, and that's when the evil team show up to try and steal the egg. So me and Morgan decide to team up against these bastards to try and scare them away forever. Before this battle, I did get some pretty cool Pokemon added to my team, like a Hisuian Quillfish and Hisuian Basculin, which I both evolved into Overquill and Basculegion respectively. Oh yeah, and did I mention that I also evolved my Frogadier into a Greninja with Battle Bond? Yeah, with this gym leader on my team, there was no way I was losing this. They basically had the same ghost type team as before, so by using my dark type moves combined with my new friend's Vaporeon, we were able to swamp them away. Morgan gives them some really good legal advice, I guess he's turned into a lawyer now, and just shouts at them to get away from here. The two admins obviously don't think this went too well, say that they will be back to try and steal this egg. Morgan realizes that without me they would not have been able to protect the egg, so they put it in my custody to try and hatch and raise it so that we can maybe use it to try and take down this cult and save the region. After this, they head back to town and we can go and take on the next gym. Obviously, I tried to hatch the egg first, but I think this might have been impossible because I put my speed up at ×10 and sprinted from left to right for literally 10 minutes and it didn't hatch. So I put it back in my PC and headed to the gym instead, because if this egg doesn't watch out, I'll make it into my breakfast. The gym itself just consisted of a very easy string puzzle, which is not what I would have expected in a water type gym, but as we reach Morgan, he says that we we are too weak to take him on. And the only way that he's going to let me challenge him is if I get the Surf HM and surf up to him. I guess taking down an evil corporation with him isn't enough to show my strength. Now I have to learn how to swim too. So now I had to backtrack because I don't even have the Fly HM yet, all the way to Solaris City and to Route 4, beat up a biker there because before this moment he would never let me through, and after showing him my strength I was able to get through Route 4, and as I'm trying to leave here we run into Red and his Pikachu. In typical Red fashion he talks in dots, and with his great charisma he forces me into battle. Bouffalant manages to Mega Horn his Venusaur out of the way, but his Dracovish against my Greninja was not the best matchup because an Outrage took me down. Durant crushes it with an X-Scissor. Overqwil and Charizard trade blows until Charizard goes down by its own Flare Blitz, and Durant takes out his last Pokemon, the Red Hat Pikachu. We have some very deep conversations after the battle, and we then follow Treach Forest until we meet up with another really cool main character, Brendan. He's here in this forest to learn the secrets of Z moves. You know, those things that you can't use anymore in main games and everybody basically forgot about? Well, they're back, baby. So after talking to Dr. Light, I get my very own Z Crystal and Z Ring and challenge Brendan to a battle, where I once again destroy one of my brothers and basically have no trouble finishing off Gardevoir, Darmanitan, and Boltund. Once Dr. Light saw how capable we are with these Z Rings and skip our way over to the next town. On our way there, I do run into a Chimchar just standing in the overworld and enter a daycare with a guy inside that can hatch any egg for you for a little fee. Obviously, I want to hatch that one glorious light egg that will save the world, so after giving it to him, it turns out to be a Zygarde Cell Form. And I'm pretty sure you can never use Cell Form in battle, but here you can, which is pretty cool, but that does mean that it's pretty weak at this point. And the only way to level it up to its next forms is by finding more cells in the overworld. So we'll be lookout for that, but first let's head over to Abaco City, where we receive the Go Goggles from Monica, so now we can head into deserts if we find one, and also enter this town's gym, which is basically a reskin of Sabrina's one. The leader here is Vince, and he has a waifu Pokemon, which is never a good sign, because we'll be facing fairy types. As we jump right into the battle, we see that his Wigglytuff sets up screens on the first 2 turns, then proceeds to destroy my Greninja. I bring in Overqwil and take it down with Poison Jab, but his Mega Gardevoir is way too strong for my oversized aquarium fish, so I get one shot and bring in Snorlax, who can paralyze with Body Slam and then finish it off with a couple more. We almost take down our Slurpuff too, but she decided to use her Dynamax on this, causing my Snorlax to fall, but we were able to paralyze it. Bouffalant can then clean up, but gets mauled by Mawile, so my big fish has to Aqua Tail it, but the last Pokemon, Sylveon, is too much for me. Luckily, our one little cell is enough to clean up and give us the Narcissus badge. The city also has a museum, and upon entering it, we see that it's once again being taken over by the cult. But before dealing with them, we talk to an archaeologist here who gives me a nice shiny egg. So I head on over to the egg hatching guy, and it hatches into a Dracozolt, a really strong team member that I'll probably keep to the end. With this amazing team member, I head back to the museum, and Mary and John are stealing a crystal there. So Mary's going to try and keep me busy while John steals it, but somehow they still both battle me. Don't really know how that works. They did have some pretty cool Pokemon like Mega Sableye and Decidueye, but after my anime-powered Greninja destroyed them all, they still managed to get away to their boss with the crystal. They've got a lot of plot armor with them, because I've stopped them in their tracks like 5 times by now. Anyway, let's go to the next round, where we meet up with Robert and his Ivysaur and Porygon that are blocking the road, unless you bring his Chimchar back. Obviously, we saw that Chimchar just a couple of minutes ago, so I go and pick it up and bring it back to him. How do you even lose your own Pokemon? Some people just don't deserve to even have one. As a reward, he lets me through and gives me the Electrium Z, so basically something useless. And then we make it to the beach, where Patrick is just staring at a sign, because on this route it is possible to find Lucarios. He wants me to capture one for him, and he will trade one of his best Pokemon for it. I politely decline because I'm not in the mood of searching for a Lucario, and then we'd get to take him on in another battle, starting off with a Scorviknight against my Dracozolt. A great great matchup for me if you wouldn't be spamming hyper potions, but I somehow came out on top with only 4 HP remaining after spamming shockwave because I don't have a physical electric type move yet. We slurp up his gastrodon like we're a Frenchman eating snails. Speaking of snails, Zygarde destroys Escavalier's home. Overcurl is the perfect matchup for Mega Sceptile by using Poison Jab, and his Facade Flame Orb Obstagoon can't use his best strategy when I just bring in Basculegion with Aqua Tail. He explains to me that I have to get to Capri Island, but in order to get there I need to use the Surf HM, which he then gives to me, so now we can also go and take on that pesky water type gym leader who wouldn't let me face him. On my way there, I almost electrocuted myself in a power plant and harassed the Yeti from Monsters Inc. in his home. In this icy cave I also had to complete some pretty easy ice puzzles, and when I was almost at the end of the cave I ran into Pokemon trainer Elaine, which is the same guy from the Generation 6 anime that showed Ash that Greninja is worth nothing. He knows that we're heading to Capri City too, but he says that we will never be able to get to the champion spot because he's been following me around and knows that we're worth absolutely nothing. That's just a great way to greet new people. I obviously get mad at him for saying this and straight up bang up his entire team. Literally, Greninja just swept through everything with Surf. After the battle, he says that I did fight well and it was a pleasure to meet me. Well, not likewise at all. So we kick him out of the cave and get to Capri City ourselves, which is snowed under. As we try to head into the Pokemon Center, Alan is here once again, explaining that the gym leader has been captured and taken away by the evil cult. So I guess we're going to have to save them. But first I talk to Marta, who is a citizen of this town, and she says something to me in Portuguese, which I just don't understand, but upon entering her house, I think I see what she means. She has a rat infestation. So just like the grandma from Ratatouille, I try to clear them out with my gas, and the only reward we really get is the Frost Breath DM. I'm not stepping into the termination business anytime soon, but I am stepping into a new roadblock named Ronan. He's blocking the road because he lost the battle to a biker and is convinced that he was cheating. So before he lets us through, we have to go and beat up this biker just to prove to him that he hasn't cheated. His name's Bellamy, and after talking to him, he won't accept a fight with me after I get 6 Malasadas. So I go to the shop and buy them for him. Then we finally beat him in a battle, take a piece of his hair as a trophy to show to the guy that we've beaten him, and then he can finally let me through. This was so unnecessary that it almost made me turn off the game. We then make our way through Snow Hill and run into a Reggie Ice room with absolutely no sign of Regice itself. The only person we see here is Isaac, and he's reading a book in front of an ice wall with weird figures on it. And he's having a squabble with the gym leader Lorena. No, not the one from Black and White. This one is actually an ice type leader. He's explaining to the gym leader that he's the one that came from another country to unleash the power of the sacred Pokemon. Lorena doesn't really understand how they even got in here because this place is supposed to be guarded 24/7, even though I didn't even run into any guards. So I don't really know what she's talking about. But this manuscript that he's reading right now is necessary to summon this sacred Pokemon, so he obviously can't let him lay his hands on it. As Lorena goes in for the attack, he freezes her with his Glalie Ice Beam, which is kind of ironic because she is an ice type leader. But this gives us the opportunity to jump in and try to take him down here and now. But we get the option of fighting him or not fighting him. I decided to not fight him because even if I fight him, I know he'll just get away. And that girl looks like she needs some help, so let's do this as fast as possible. Isaac is able to flee with the manuscript, and we can't unfreeze the gym leader without a potion. So we head back to town, give an ice heal to an old woman there, and she brews up a defrost potion for us. I head back to the cave, hopefully she hasn't frozen to death by now, and I pour it over her to unfreeze her. She doesn't really know where she is or what happened, so after explaining everything to her, and she starts panicking that he read the manuscript and knows what he has to do to get this legendary Pokemon out. But the only thing we can really do is try to investigate further and see what their next move is, which we don't know yet. But I do know what my next move is going to be, taking on Lorena as her gym. Like any ice type gym, she has an ice type puzzle in there, but this one is actually mixed with a pitfall trap. So you have to remember the right path if you don't want to get sent all the way back to the beginning. She has a pretty cool team, starting out with a Nolola Ninetales that sets up the the snow. Or should I say hail. Overkill can easily deal with this by using Poison Jab, and I also got frozen and found out that the regular freeze doesn't work in this game, it's Frostbite from Legends Arceus. I'm almost able to take down Frostlass with Aqua Tails because it missed triple axles, but eventually I do go down. Greninja then tries to take it down with Acrobatics, but she swaps out into Jinx, which I then take out with a couple of those after she spams Hyper Potions, giving me my Battle Bond. So as she brings in her Darmanitan, I decide to go for the Dynamax, use Max Geyser, and take out the oversized monkey. I trade blows with a Bomb of Snow, but it is able to take me out with Wood Hammer, but the recoil damage lets it fall too. Basculegion takes out Frostmoth with Aqua Tail and finishes off Frostlass with Crunch, and that gives me the Frost Badge. Upon exiting the gym, Mr. Solomon comes to talk to me and gives me a Skull Relic, which can be used to teleport from city to city with those weird portals we've seen on the ground before. Don't ask me how this evil magic works, but I'm going to take this as a replacement for Fly any time of the week. Take this teleporter to go and take on Morgan. He'll be the 6th gym leader we take on, but honestly, he was pretty much a pushover because I have Dracozold, and even though he had a pretty decent team with Politoed, Shiny Mega Gyarados, Cloyster, Lantern, Kingdra, and Barraskewda, I still Thunder Punched my way through most of them and gained the Flow Badge. Since we now have Surf, we can go back to that one beach where we got the egg and continue our journey from there. There are 3 very big Gyaradoses blocking the way, and I do have to say that this is really cool to look at. I think these sprites might be from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon or Rangers. Either way, they look great. At the end of this round, we run into Gold, and he says that we have to get through Mobius Desert in order to get to Pompano City. But if we want to get through the desert, we do need the Go Goggles, which we obviously picked up already. There would be no running into a rival if there wasn't a battle straight afterwards, so let's get into it. Overkill dealt with Ambipom and Surfetch by poisoning them with Poison Jabs. His Mega Scizor used Bullet Punch on my Basculegion, so he was an easy kill with 2 Aqua Tails too. His Berserker somehow killed me with an Aqua Tail, so Bouffalant came in and head charged it out of the way. Typhlosion's Eruption is always going to hurt, so I bring in Greninja after my Bouffalant goes down and put out his flames with Surf. Togekiss is an easy kill with Iron Head from Durant, so Gold is defeated, we say our goodbyes and head into the desert. Even though it gave me a ton of sand in my eyes and basically made me blind, it was a very cool desert with an oasis at the middle of it, with a guy that lost his son in the desert, so let's go and search for him. He was literally trapped in a room that he couldn't get out, and then he started speaking Portuguese to me, so I just left him in there and headed to the next city. Upon entering the Pokemon Center, we see a familiar face, and you know the drill by now. Beat him up in a battle, he tells me where the next gym is located, which is in Limia City, and we follow his footsteps to the local spa. So I obviously went in for a relaxing time with the professor and 2 old people, and I felt kind of uncomfortable, so instead I headed to the gym, and can you guess what this gym's typing is going to be, just from the layout of it? No, it's sadly enough not grass, but they do have the coolest layout out of any gym I've seen in this game. His name is Jarrett, and guess what fire type he has? Yeah, Charizard. I've seen way too many of those in this playthrough already, and with Basculegion's Aqua Tail and Greninja's Max Geyser, we'd made it rain on all of his fire types and sizzled them all out. Except for his Venusaur, who did get destroyed by Overquill. We get the Marble Badge as our reward, which I don't know what marbles have to do with fire, but hey, I'm not going to question it. Instead, I'm going to move on with my journey and try to get to these guards, but they tell me I need to give them 10 golden bottle caps if I want to get into this forest. There must be a gold mine in there because I ain't paying that. I listen to an old man telling the lore about Rayquaza and run into Patrick again. He's found some of the cultists and is trying to round them up, but he can't defeat all of them by himself, so I need to help him out a bit. But Ravina, one of the admins, has heard everything we've just talked about and proceeds to go on about their philosophy as to why this world is not good anymore and all of that shenanigans, but I'm just going to shut her up right here and now because I've heard enough. She has a very weak ghost type team with a Shedinja and stuff thrown in there, nothing really notable, and even after beating her up, she decides to not let me through, forcing me to find another way around them. We get to a forest with a giant tree in it, but there's a little guy living in this tree with a weird mask, and he has a quest for me. He wants me to go and get a special leaf from the top of a mountain, but in order to get up this mountain, I need the climbing boots, which he supplies me with. So I go to the mountain, use my rock climbing boots, and guess who is also in this cave? The cult. We're about to break down their door and clear them all out, FBI FBI style. But first we do pick up the sacred wheat for the masked guy, and at the end of the cave we find our boy Isaac. He explains to me that he's already got everything he needs for the sacred Pokemon, and then goes on to explain the reasoning as to why he became this evil priest character and wasn't like a baker or something. When he was 17 years old, he had a partner which was a Kalava. They were the bestest of friends, winning battles in every single region. But one day he traveled to the Kanto region where he met up with a boy named Giovanni, and he really identified with him, sharing the same beliefs and trying to follow into his footsteps. One day Giovanni took him to a power plant, but something horrible happened there. They got jumped by a biker gang, and sadly enough, Isaac wasn't able to get his Kulava to a Pokemon Center, and his little buddy died. At that point, he has always swore to take revenge for his fallen Pokemon, to try and change humanity. And then he manages to flee the scene once more, but to be completely honest, it's definitely a bit excessive trying to change the entire world just because you lost your Pokemon. When I do my Nuzlocke, I lose like 1 billion Pokemon, and I still feel fine. We then head back to the big tree and give the sacred wheat to Sadida. As a reward, we get a Hisuian Zoroark, which is going to be super useful in many of the upcoming battles. So I decide to enter Limia City, and we see the cult going on a boat, traveling to the last place where they need to be. As you can see, the entire city is also being taken over by the cult, but eventually we run into Leviata. She's a resident in this town, and after explaining to her that we're with the professor, she needs our help to break into one of the houses to get all of her Pokeballs back. So after getting to her house, beating up one of the grunts that's blocking the entrance, we can enter her house with her. We get ambushed by police officers, like why weren't they outside dealing with the situation? Just doesn't really make sense to me, but let's be honest, not a lot in this game does. Leviata tells me that she can't go and to save the world from the cult because she has to protect the town, and sends me after the cult leader instead. We have to take a boat at the port of Limia, which will take us to Otomai, where we will hopefully find what we're looking for. So after giving me a ticket, I went on my merry way, but not to the ferry, to the gym instead. And this is basically like an invisible path that you have to try and figure out, but watch out, because if you fall into the wrong direction, you'll have to start all over again. But to be honest, just use safe states. I also evolved my Zoroark into Zoroark, and as it turns out, Leviata is actually the gym leader too, and it's not a she at all, it's a he. His specialization is Dragon types, but he starts out with a Sandaconda, which I ultimately just one-shot. I Dynamax on the next Pokemon Scrafty and take it out with a Max Geyser. Heliolisk survives a Max Hailstorm and kills me with Thunderbolt, but dies to Life Orb damage the turn after. I bring in Bufalon to take down his Mega Gyarados with 2 hit charges, thanks to a lucky critical hit. Dracozolt does some decent damage against Appleton and Dragonite, switching them out a couple of times, and Overquill wins me the battle by jabbing his last 2 Pokemon, giving me the Flex Badge, which I'll use to flex on all of my rivals. Otomai Island is our next destination, but it's basically just like a jungle with a big swamp in it, and in the middle of this swamp is a temple, where all of the cultists gather to try and find what they're looking for to spawn in this sacred Pokemon. After traversing our way through the temple, beating up all of the grunts, we eventually make it to the bottom where we have to give in a password. But I didn't even give in a password and the door opened anyway. What was behind the door, you may ask? Well, nothing except for a glitched out Zygarde and a pool full of lava. Apparently this is all we had to do, because then we can head back to the desert town and a random hiker will give you the crazy maze. Yo bro, that's kinda crazy. But at least we can break rocks now and get through here. This path leads us to a graveyard where we sadly enough find Patrick. He's been trying to find some members of the cult but to no avail, and while he was searching for them, he got ambushed by 2 sect henchmen who killed his recently captured Eevee. This one is now buried here and he's paying his respects, which makes me even more angry at this stupid sect that has no drive whatsoever, so let's go and make sure they stop harassing everyone. So me and Patrick head on over to the professor, who has no idea what's going on in this region and is basically oblivious to anything happening around him. After enlightening him of everything that happened, he says that there is only one way that we can stop the sect, and that's by using the 1 copy of Zygarde that we have. Listen listen, Professor, it really doesn't matter what I use. I can probably beat him up with a level 100 Caterpie, let's be honest. It tells me to go to Mystical Mountain because that's where you have to summon Zygarde with the help of Yveltal and Xerneas. Anyway, on my way to the top, I run into Red again. I guess he had the same plan of trying to stop the sect because he's been roaming the region just like I have. But instead of going to take on the cult, he takes me on in a battle. He basically has the same team as last time but added a Sneasler and a Snorlax, which is nothing I couldn't crush with my big Bouffalan's head. As it turns out, they weren't in this mountain yet because eventually I reached Rangiroa City, the place of the final gym leader. But when I try to enter her gym, I get stopped by May. That's right, from the Horn region, and she mentions that the gym leader is not even here. She's visiting some family in Stellaris City, so if we want to battle her, we have to go there, talk to her, and bring her back. So that's what we do. We rip her away from her family, put her back to work, and challenge her normal type gym. Believe it or not, but Toxic Spikes was really useful here. Poisoning every single one of her team members, forced to take damage every turn, really racks up in time. Overkill itself was only able to take down Dunsparce, while a combined effort of Dracozolt and Bouffalant take down a Gigantamax Heliolisk. Her Mega Kangaskhan gets destroyed by Greninja. Even though I'm Dynamaxed, Snorlax isn't going down in one turn and kills me with Body Slam. Durant then cleans up Snorlax, also X-Scissors Indeedee, and takes down Miltank by milking it with Iron Head. With the Rudimental badge, just like the band, in our hand, we decide to track back to the mountain, where this time the cult is blocking an entrance and the press is trying to film it. They aren't leaving their spot unless we defeat them in a Pokemon battle, so Patrick comes along, we smack them around real good, and we follow the path to the top of the mountain. Patrick made it here before us and explains that Isaac has already started with the process of summoning the legendary. Zygarde is standing in front of him, and he's worshipping it as if it's a god, saying that these pillars that once trapped him here for eternity have now been turned into spears, which allowed him to come back to Earth and create this new world together with Isaac. He says that so many people believe in Arceus, but he's the only one that believes in Zygarde, because if Arceus was really real, the world wouldn't be this cruel. He says that there will be no more violence and wars after he's done creating this new world, which sounds like a good thing, but honestly, I don't want this guy in charge of anything, so I barge in there and challenge Isaac to our final battle as he starts off with an Eviolite Corsola. I lead off with my Hisuian Zoroark disguised as Durant and used 3 nasty plots to max out my special attack. If you thought I was going to sweep here, you are wrong. I was only able to kill the Corsola because the Dragapult already took me down, but Overquill was able to deal with it. His Mega Gengar stood no chance to a single knockoff, but his Marshadow, however, punched me into the ground with close combat. Why is he even summoning Zygarde? Marshadow is a way better Pokemon. Dracozolt sends it to the Shadow Realm with Bullbeak. Mimikyu is here to put some dirt in my eye. I have a Mimikyu killer, however, Durant with Iron Head. I also do some decent damage on the next Pokemon, Aegislash, but biting it wasn't my best choice, as eating a Sword and Shield is probably not the best idea. Greninja then came in and ended this battle once and for all. But we aren't done yet, because he challenges me again with 3 Pokemon this time. The 3 legendaries, Xerneas, Yveltal, and the mighty Zygarde himself that deserved that Pokemon Z back when X and Y came out. He's now here to take his revenge. But this one was pretty easy. Durant dealt with Xerneas, and Greninja took down Zygarde and Yveltal with Ice Beams. But the Zygarde was level 100, which was pretty surprising. After the battle, Isaac doesn't want to believe that he lost and scolds at Zygarde for being so weak and lowering his head to a mere human. He really thought he was going to achieve his dream with Zygarde, but then Zygarde starts talking all of a sudden, like he's a Mewtwo or something. He says that Isaac is a poor human soul and will never achieve his dreams if they aren't right. He's been empty inside and has been a disappointment to all of humanity. He also says that Arceus is actually real and has been watching us all from the heavens. He's even sent Zygarde down here to try and protect the Earth's ecosystem. He then says that maybe one day Isaac will find the peace he so longs for, but now the police show up together with the mayor and they bring away Isaac and put him in jail where he will never be able to do any more wrong. We say our goodbyes to Isaac, who will obviously be protecting the Earth from now on, and the mayor has also invited me to his office because he has a beautiful reward for me for saving the region. And what do you think this might be? Maybe a Master Ball or something? Nope, an Insinium Z for a special move for my Incineroar that I don't have. Thank you very much for this very useful item. I shall never save your region again. Goodbye. I'm about to head to Victory Road with my boy Patrick. He's been inspired by me to take on the Pokemon League himself, but before we go and do this last hard path together, he wants to test our strength. Zoroark versus Corviknight. I take it out with a Nasty Block boosted Shadow Ball, put his Skunk Tank into the ground with Bad Tantrums from Dracozolt, surf away his Ursaluna with Greninja, Giga Impact his Mega Sceptile with Bouffalant, Poison Jab his newly acquired Silvally with Overqwil, and finally Phalanx falls to Iron Head from Durand. He goes on to wish me good luck in the Pokemon League because we'll probably be facing each other. Now on to Victory Road. We pass by the Bad Chick, go through different biomes like a cave, a maze with statues and treasure chest in it. At the end of the cave we run into Alan again, who could have sworn that I would have never made it this far, even though we totally destroyed him last time. While he might have a totally different team from last time, I still crushed his spirit with my tiny little ant. He's really embarrassed after losing to me and says to his Charizard that we have to train some more. That's when he leaves, and hopefully this is the last time I see this guy because I kinda hate him. Do the Ruby and Sapphire Seafloor Cavern puzzle and end up at Geralt, the guy from The Witcher. He decides to take me up to the Pokemon League in a blimp. But arriving there, the Pokemon League seems a little bit tiny, like a school tiny, or maybe a little chapel. But as we enter, we realize really quickly that we can't just go and battle the Elite Four and Champion. First, we have to get through the tournament. What is this tournament? It's basically just a gauntlet battle of you fighting every single mainline character there has ever existed. You start off by fighting May. Once you beat her, everybody's favorite emo kid Galadian shows up. Once that's done, you face Barry. Surprisingly, Red isn't last in this game. You face him right after Barry. With Red out of the way, you have to face your stupid, cocky friend Alan, even though we just fought him and showed him who's boss. The second to last trainer is N from the Unova region, and I did think it was pretty cool he was here, but I would have liked to see him used throughout the story a bit more. And the last fight of the tournament is once again against your rival, Patrick. We also just beat him, so I'm not going to go over any of these fights, because it is kind of a fun tournament, going face to face with so many popular characters. But I'm here for the Elite Four members and champion. So once you win this tournament, you get the key to unlock that, which is the Mystic Key. Once you then show this to a guard, he will let you into the first Elite Four members room. A red knight that's probably a reference to something, but I have no idea to what. His name's Annibal and he specializes in rock types. But since rock is one of the worst typings ever and our team is pretty well built around taking down rock types, this was absolutely a pushover. Zoroark takes down Colossal with just 2 Shadow Balls. I used my Z-Power Hydro Vortex, honestly it might be the first time I ever use a Z move, to take down his Mega Tyranitar with Greninja. With my Battle Bond activated, I easily one-shot Terrakion and Knuckle almost swamp away Nihilego, but it survives because of its large special defense stat and counters back with a Meteor Beam. So Dracozolt cleans up, and the last Pokemon, Rhyperior, is no match for Hisuian Zoroark. The second Elite Four member, also a knight. This time his name is Leonidas and he just has a different color. And his specialization, bug types. The 6-time boosted Nasty Plotted Zoroark, this fight was the easiest I've ever seen. Shadow Balling Cleavor, taking down Mega Heracross with Extra Sensory. I do have to say, I really love this Heracross sprite. Even after Dynamaxing, his Buzzwole couldn't survive a single Extra Sensory. Scizor and Volcarona only took 1 Shadow Ball, and the final Pokemon, Araquanid, went down to Sludge Bombs. The next Dark Knight, Hercules, specialized in Psychic types, which means another sweep for my Zoroark. Except for maybe Tapu Lele, who was able to take me out but still went down to Overqwil's knockoffs and Poison Jabs. And maybe Doublade too, but he also got killed by knockoff. Onto the last one, Herodies. Nuts. He by far has the coolest colors out of any of them, but he seems to have specialized in flying types. This time, absolutely no sweep for my Zoroark because I got leech seeded and the damage had to rack up way too much on his first Pokemon, Celesteela. I was able to get it down with Shadow Ball, but his next Pokemon, Gyarados, killed me and even got a Moxie boost out of it. Overkill came in, killed the Gyarados with Poison Jabs, and the next Pokemon, Landorus Therian, with Aqua Tail and Knockoff 2, no idea how that even happened. Talonflame did end me, so I had to swap in Dracozolt and take that thing as well as a Mega Aerodactyl out with Bolt Beaks and the final Pokemon Galarian Articuno with the cooler glasses, sent my dinosaur back to the Ice Age, so I made sure to Dynamax by Durant and Max Darkness this thing to end the battle with a bang. Only one more trainer before we reach Eternal Glory, but who is this guy going to be? He starts off by mentioning that my adventure here was probably very hard and that he knows everything about it because he was there from the very beginning. Everywhere I went, he was with me, but I've never seen this guy before, which definitely means he's some kind of stalker. He says that he has manipulated all the results of my battles to get this exact outcome. Everything I have done on this journey is because of him. His name is Joshua and he's the son of Isaac, the cult leader that I sent to jail, and he's here to take revenge. What I don't understand though is if he was the one manipulating everything, why didn't he just manipulate his dad winning? Anyway, let's beat him up just like we did with his dad. This time sitting up with Zoroark didn't work as I got destroyed by a single earthquake from his mutant mole. Greninja swept it up with Surf, Overkill killed his Sylveon with a single poison jab. He also has a Charizard. Who made this game and why do they love Charizard so much? Because almost every major trainer has one. He does Mega Evolve into the white form, and after scorching my pufferfish, I bring in my oversized frog and use my Z-move Hydro Vortex to take it down. Hydreigon then comes in, Draco Meteors me, and turns Greninja into a fossil. Durant then finishes it with X-Scissor. He also has a Basculegion that goes down the same turn as my Durant because his recoil damage was too much after getting hit by a Crunch. And the last Pokemon on the list was kind of anticlimactic, a Lawnmower that Buffalon just Mega Horned. This should technically crown me as the champion of the region, right? But as Joshua is breaking down, telling me that he just wanted to learn me a lesson about how to not meddle in other people's affairs, but then he gets a call from the police saying that they're here to pick him up. Because as it turns out, he's not the champion at all. He's just disguised as the champion and somehow broke in here to try and just teach me a lesson and says that we will meet again in the near future. And he will destroy me when that happens. He vanishes into thin air and the police, combined with the professor and the mayor, walk in. They explain the entire situation to me, and even though I haven't really defeated the actual champion, they're still going to crown me as the Seafood Region champion because of all of the things that I have accomplished. And that, my friends, is the end of Pokemon Dark Worship. To be completely honest, I'd give this game like a 5.5 out of 10. It's really not all that great. The story is very lackluster and the dialogue is very cringy to read. It does have a pretty fun region and the battles are at least interesting to do, so if you really don't care about the story all that much, this game is definitely for you. And I also really like the art style, but besides that, I really don't think I'll ever return to this game. Maybe if the translation was a bit better, I would have enjoyed it more, but if you're Portuguese, you might enjoy this game a lot more than I did. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, I want to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. As always, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you guys next time.